Hey, the internet, I'm Mitch. I'm one of the pastors here at Suncrest, and you're watching episode 3, the series finale of a series of weekends and messages that we've been calling The Weight of Your Words. Let's get going.
You probably all have some kind of story like this in your life. I have dozens I could have chosen from, but think about this. When our kids were little, we went to an amusement park along with my brothers and their families. All the cousins were together. My son was just old enough, just tall enough to ride some of the bigger roller coasters with his older cousins, so very excited. And he was walking up the steps to a roller coaster once. This roller coaster was called Big Bad John. And on these steps, as you walked up, some of you have seen steps like this. It was metal steps, and they'd kind of peeled away holes out of the metal to create traction on the steps. It had rained a little bit. It was a little bit slippery, and Jackson was up there, kind of walking up the steps when one of his cousins turned around and didn't mean to. It was totally an accident, but kind of knocked Jackson, and he slipped, and he starts tumbling down these stairs. Stair after stair after stair. It's so sharp on the top of these stairs. He gets to the bottom of the stairs, and he picks his head up, and he looks at me, and there is blood everywhere. And since it was an accident, I told him, get over it. Right? No. It's okay to disagree with me out there. You can't disagree with me like right here. The answer, of course, is no. I would be a poor father if, because it was an accident, I thought, well, that doesn't need any attention. I mean, it wasn't anyone's intention to hurt him. So since there wasn't a bad intent, you might think there wasn't attention that was needed to be given to it. But what is so obvious in our physical lives that even when something is an accident, even when it wasn't intended, if it creates pain and hurt and heartache and hardship, you have to give attention to it. And it's so interesting to me that what is so obvious to us in the physical world is oftentimes so misunderstood in our relational world. That's what I want to talk about today. We've been in this series called The Weight of Your Words, and we've kind of been exploring that not all words weigh the same, right? We've said some words weigh more. Jenny and I have been married 27 years today. It's our anniversary. Yeah. And here's the truth. If you've been married a long time, you know this. We've said millions of words to each other, and most of them were mundane, right? 98% of our words were about schedules and about laundry and about the calendar and about kids and about bedtimes and about all those sorts of things that you just have to talk about to get through life. But some words weighed more. And I think because we live so much of our life in the noise of our own words and other people's words, we sometimes don't appreciate that there is a segment of our words, some words that weigh more. And even for Jenny and I, you can probably imagine, we promised 27 years ago today, for better or worse. And like everyone else, we've had some seasons in our marriage that were worse. And when they were worse, the idea that we had made vows to each other weighed a lot. There were times that weren't just low spots for our marriage, there were times that were just low spots for me. And if you're married to someone and it was a low spot for them, you know this. When your spouse is in a low spot, you, as their husband or wife, have an enormous power in their life. You have the power to walk with them and lift them up, or you absolutely have the power in their low spot to snuff them out. And the choices that you make in those moments aren't like all the other words. Some words weigh more. And when we're on the receiving end of this, it's so obvious to us. I've been saying that our lives have been shaped by words that were said to us and over us and about us. You've been in a low point in your life, and you know the power of this. Someone either lifted you up out of it, or with their words, they snuffed you out. And we can be scarred for a long time, even in our identity. And so we've been talking about 3 different parts of our lives where our words weigh more and the dynamics that are existing that change the weight of our words. The first idea from week 1 was simply this, that negative words weigh way more. That positive words and negative words in our relationships are not weighted equally, not even close. It will take many more positive affirmations than to make up for one single negative word, and it really, really matters in our life. We should be practicing proportion control with the people that matter to us, with our bosses and our employees, our grandparents and our children, with everyone in our lives. The ratio of our positive to negative words, they really, really matter. And in the second week of the series, last week, we talked about how the roles and relationships we have make a deeper impression. And here's the idea. There are many people in your life who are essentially meaningless to you. You probably won't even come across them again anytime soon. But there is a certain circle of people in our lives that because of their role or their relationship to us, their words weigh more. And think of it like this. The people whose words weigh more are people who you trust. A trust relationship has been established, and now when they say something to you, it really matters. Or they might be people that you've been entrusted to. Someone said, here's your teacher, you can trust them. Here's your coach, you can trust them. Here's the judge, you can trust her. And when you've been entrusted, or when you've trusted someone, the words that they say matter more. And of course, we could go back to the negative side of this and think about how we've been scarred, but think about the positive side of this. When someone in that circle that you trust says, I believe in you. They say, I'm proud of you. They say, I'm sticking by your side no matter what. Those words really matter from someone you can trust. And what's so interesting about this, if we could just zoom it out a little bit, is Jesus himself lived by these principles. Last week I told you that followers of Jesus, our role in this world means our words weigh more. And that's part of what Jesus taught us. And it's interesting that if you watch the life of Jesus himself, think about this. Jesus had the kindest, most gracious words for people who are nothing like him. For people who did not believe what he had believed, for people who seemed to be too far gone, for people who were rebelling against what he said, for people who saw the world differently than he saw it. For those people, he had the kindest, most gracious words. And do you know who Jesus reserved his harshest words for? Pay attention. He reserved his harshest words for religious leaders who were using their harsh words against people who had kind of given up on faith or thought they were too far gone. Because to Jesus, it was not okay that the religious leaders were actually misusing their words. And of course, we've picked this up in a single verse out of Ephesians chapter 4 that I want us all to live with far beyond this series. It says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. And the whole idea here is that you will have all kinds of thoughts come to your mind. You are the gatekeeper for what comes out of your mouth. And we don't have to let everything that comes to our mind come out of our mouth. One of the most strategic, one of the most significant, one of the most life-altering decisions you can make is to decide what comes out of your mouth and what doesn't come out of your mouth. Your mouth is the gate, and you are the gatekeeper. And it has enormous consequences for us. Only let come out what's helpful for building others up. It's a reminder that every conversation we're in is essentially a construction zone. And our words have the chance either to build someone up or tear them down. And the message of the scriptures is to say, hey, make sure the words that come out of your mouth are the ones that are there to build somebody up. And do it according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And I want to ask all of you to think about this with me right now. Did you have a tough conversation with anyone today? At work? The boss, with a customer, with an employee? Did you have a tough conversation? Did you have a tough conversation in the last few days at home? With your spouse, or with your son, or your daughter, or with your mom, or your dad? And if you could just kind of let that conversation that was tough surface in your mind today, here's the question. When you reflected on that conversation, When you were in that conversation, were you thinking about the other person? About their feelings? About how they received it? About how they experienced it? Or were you thinking about yourself? This is the move for a follower of Jesus. It's the mark of humility that says, when I'm in a conversation, and every conversation is a construction zone, I could think about how this is affecting me right now, or I could think about how it's affecting them, and I'm going to handle these conversations not according to my needs, but according to their needs. And so, today we're going to explore the third element. Now, the third element is built on a presumption. It's a presumption that I am absolutely confident is correct. And the presumption is this, that though the scriptures teach this, though some of us are followers of Jesus and have been for a long time, none of us have gotten this perfect. All of us, with our words, have left the gate open. And some words came out of our mouth that we wish hadn't come out of our mouth. They hurt somebody. They maybe even scarred somebody. And the question is, after we messed up, and we've all messed up, what comes next? And you could think about this with me, couldn't you? That if hurtful words have come out of our mouth, we've dug a little bit of a hole relationally. When hurtful words are said to us, someone else has dug a hole relationally with us. And when you're in that hole that's been dug, the words that come next either keep digging or give a chance to repair that relationship. Now, it's so interesting to me when we think about this, because after you've said something that's hurtful or harmful, you let words come out, you were frustrated, but now you realize, that wasn't right. A lot of times we kind of get into thinking about our part instead of thinking about the other person. And one of the things that runs through our mind is we think, I wasn't meaning to hurt them. I wasn't trying to hurt them. And this is the message for today. Intent is usually irrelevant. The idea that you didn't mean to, that you weren't trying to, that in your perception they took something the wrong way, is essentially irrelevant. It's as irrelevant as when my son fell down the steps of that roller coaster, and when he was at the bottom, I would have said, well, it was an accident, so I guess we don't have any work to do here. The intent behind our words carries a lot of weight, especially after we've messed up. One of the things that I'm prone to do after I've messed up with someone is to go to them and start explaining to them why I needed to say what I said. I might even say, I'm sorry, but I needed to say this because of this reason. You, no doubt, have said to someone else along the way, well, I was just joking. I was just trying to be funny. Why are you taking it so seriously? And there's something inside of us that tries to try to explain something away, but I want us to hear this today. That after you've said something wrong, when you begin to try to explain it away, explaining sounds like blaming. If I'm in a conversation and I've done something wrong and I start to tell you why I've done it wrong, then, we all can see this, right? You can especially see it when you're on the receiving end, that I'm now going to justify what I said. There are times, for sure, there's people in this room who say something that hurts, and you meant to say it. You actually meant to hurt them. You would use a phrase, something like, well, the truth hurts. If the shoe fits, wear it. But even just one off from that, the close cousin, where you're not trying to jam something down someone's throat, you even maybe even start to apologize and you say, you know what, I didn't mean it that way. What I was trying to say was, and then you start explaining. Explanations sound a lot like blaming. And it even gets deeper than that. Think about this with me. Even apologies with explanations start to seem like excuses and expectation. You know, if you're in a conversation with someone and you've done them wrong, and you say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, but I was tired. You know, I shouldn't have said it that way, but you got to learn to take a joke. I can see that hurt you, but sometimes you got to toughen up that skin a little bit. Even apologies with explanations seem like excuses. And if you're in that relational hole that you've caused because you were the one who said something wrong, we all have, right? If you're in that hole, the aim is not to justify your behavior. The aim is to give room to repair the relationship because you dug the hole and I dug the hole. Sometimes we think it's our job to repair the relationship. We start to apologize, and then very quickly we say, so we're good, right? So we're clear, right? So we're back out of the hole, right? But the moment that we take our apologies and then we lay on top of it a set of expectations, it really just communicates an excuse, doesn't it? It would make the person across from you feel like I heard I'm sorry, but I don't feel they're sorry. And that's because intent is usually irrelevant. Now, I'm going to sit for just a minute in a passage in a letter in the Bible called James. It was written by a guy named James. If you've been around here, you know James was literally the biological brother of Jesus. And James' story is wild. It's wild to me. It's one of the reasons I actually am a follower of Jesus. James didn't believe that his brother was the Son of God while they were growing up together, and you probably wouldn't believe it about your brother either. But after Jesus rose from the dead and James saw Jesus rise from the dead, something changed in James. And he became a devoted follower of his brother as the Son of God. I think James has credibility in almost anything that he writes because of the transformation of what he went through, because he saw his brother. And actually, this isn't in the Bible. I don't get this from the Bible, but a historian named Josephus talks about what eventually happened to James. James was the leader of the early church in Jerusalem, like right where everything had originally happened. Many of the other apostles spread and took the message to the known world, but James stayed right there. And James ended up being taken outside the city walls one day and beaten, stoned to death. He really believed that his brother was the Son of God. And so when people ask me, maybe you're not a follower of Jesus, or maybe you're a brand new follower of Jesus, and they say, hey, where should I start when I'm reading the Bible? I almost always point them to James. And if you're thinking that, like, hey, actually I want to start this habit of reading the Bible, where would I start? I'd say start with James. And I tell you that in part because his story lends credibility. You're reading the story of a man who was Jesus' biological brother and gave his life believing that he saw Jesus rise from the dead. And on top of that, it's a very practical book. It's one of the easiest to understand. James is just really straightforward with how he writes. And I think you'll see that here in James chapter 3 as he goes back to the same theme as Ephesians 4. He says, we all stumble in many ways. We can agree with that, right? Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect. And I think, wow, what a statement. Any of us who have never been the ones to say the wrong thing, you've never done it in your whole life, that makes you perfect. And I want to take this seriously for a moment. Show of hands. Show of hands. How many of you are perfect? Oh, that was a quick up and down over there. I will talk to you in the comments area after the service. That's good. So I'm just walking us through this, right? We've all agreed that none of us is perfect. The reason none of us is perfect is we've used hurtful words before. We've not handled the gate perfectly. That's the point. And I don't want to be dismissive of that, because if you don't handle the gate perfectly, somebody experienced pain on the other side of that. Now, you could think of an example from this morning. You could think of an example from 25 years ago when you said something to someone and that relationship has never been the same. Or you could think of something all in between. But if we'll own this together, if we can not just say, oh, these are words that James wrote in a nice letter, but we'd say, oh, that's me. I definitely have let things come out of the gate that were unwholesome, not helpful, didn't build something up, and they were about me, not them. You can think about this. And then, interestingly, James, because he likes to explain things in ways we can understand, he gives us 3 images. Here's the first image. He says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. And he's going to start using physical illustrations about the power of our tongue or the power of our mouth to shape everything in our lives. It's like horses. You guys know horses. I don't know if your kids did this, but my kids wanted to ride horses when they were very small. And just from time to time, we would go on a riding trip or a riding trail. And I remember my son or my daughter, you know this, they're on a horse that's so much bigger than they are. Their legs aren't even big enough to be down around the horse. They're sticking straight out. And when my kids were so small that they were on this big horse, it can create some fear for a parent to be like, what could happen? But the point is, nothing's going to happen, because that horse has a bit in its mouth, and even my small little child who has the reins, if they control the bit, they control the horse. Because, and this is the point, as the mouth goes, the horse goes. As the mouth goes, life goes. This small piece, this seemingly small piece of how we are, of who we are, has an indescribable impact on the direction of our life. That's picture number 1. Picture number 2. Or take ships as an example, he says. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Ships didn't have engines back then. It really was sails and winds and a rudder. Yeah. Can I show you, some of your ship experts, but think about this. This is a ship. This is the back of a ship. This is the rudder. And you turn that little rudder a little bit this way or a little bit that way, and it takes the whole ship in one direction. What's the point? The point is that our words, our mouth, our tongue, is the small part of us, but it actually sets the course for our whole life. That's what James is saying. He says, all right, another illustration. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. And some of you have thought about this. We've certainly seen these pictures on the news. This is a picture of a forest fire. Think about how that blazes. We've heard these stories even recently in our country of oh my goodness, not only does that cause loss of forests and animals and such, it's overcome towns, cause loss of life, all those sorts of things. That is destructive. But that started with, there it is. Tell me that doesn't happen to you every time you use one of these. Think about this. That becomes that. And it destroys things. And this is James' point. It's what he's needing us to embrace. He says the tongue is also a fire. And it can do good things. There's other parts of the scriptures that talk about how you can build others up, but James is going to zero in on our dilemma today, since none of us is perfect. And he says, the tongue is also a fire that sets the whole course of one's life on fire. The tongue is kind of an odd part of our body. Nobody wants to look at your tongue. Your tongue, I don't know if you know this, it has 8 muscles inside of it. They're actually the only muscles in your body that never get tired. And nobody's surprised by that. This tongue, our words, some of us have been thinking about this for a few weeks. They've set some pretty big fires. And marriages have been burned down. And kids have left home and never come back. And jobs were lost, and dreams were shattered. Relationships were devastated. Because the tongue, well, it's a fire. And it sets the whole course for our life. Now, this is so interesting to me. Since we all agree in here that our tongues have set some fires, the question is, what's the next move? After my tongue set the fire this morning, or 25 years ago, or somewhere in between, what's the next move? And what most of us think is the next move is, well, I need to contain the fire. I need to contain it. And most of us, I'm just, maybe this isn't you, I'm sure this is me. Most of us think the way I would contain the fire is by explaining myself. I would want to go to someone and say, yeah, man, I'm sorry that you're hurt. Here's why I said what I said. Here's the reason. Here's what was going on in my life. Here's what actually you still need to work on here. And somehow, though explaining seems like blaming, and apologies with explanations sound like excuses and expectations, we still go about letting the next words that come out of our mouth try to contain something. But the goal of a fire is not to contain it. The goal with a fire is to extinguish it. And I'm inviting all of you, but my sense is the Spirit is working on 15 of you. Say there's a relationship in your life, and you've been trying to contain the fire because of something you said. But the goal should be to extinguish it. And word fires are extinguished with sensitivity and with humility. The moment we've said something harsh or difficult or rude, we've hurt someone, the pathway to actually hoping that there could be a repair is that we first have to put the fire out. And the way that we put the fire out is we have the next conversation according to their needs, not according to our needs. It leaves no room for justification of what I've said. It only leaves room for sensitivity to how it hurt you. It appreciates that I'm the guilty party. And the other person is the victim. And everything in our words and in our tone and in our body language demonstrates sensitivity to the idea that I caused you pain. And of course, that comes with humility. The very move of humility is to stop elevating myself in a situation and begin to elevate the other person. And so I want to be as practical as I can be and as scriptural as I can be, and I think as transforming as I can be. And I want to give you the words for you to say to the person that you've hurt. Here are the words. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Now, this next thing is the most important part of this phrase. Okay, you ready? I'm so sorry. Period. And you're going to be tempted to want to say something else after you've said you're sorry. And if it starts to stir inside of you, you're like, I just got to keep talking, then this is my suggestion. After you say, I'm so sorry, say again, I'm so sorry. Say something that elevates them and doesn't elevate you. Say something that appreciates the sensitivity of the situation. Say, you didn't deserve that. I don't have any justification for what I said. There was no good reason for that to come out of my mouth. I'm so sorry. And then sit and wait. I know you're going to be tempted to say something else. I know. I'm tempted to say something else. But when you sit in that moment and you just apologize, period, you sit in your guilt, which is appropriate. And you create space for the other person to control the restoration process. It's so tempting to try to take control of the restoration process, to feel like you've said that you're sorry, to want someone to respond to that, especially to want someone to respond to that immediately. But I got to tell you, you got to be careful about asking for empathy. I'm so sorry. And then some of us are prone to say something like, I feel so bad that I did this. And do you know what you did? I'm so sorry. That's about you, and it's about what I said, and I'm owning it. I feel so bad actually has recentered myself. You got to be really careful about remaking this about you right after that you've said, I'm sorry. You got to be careful about asking for a hug. I'm so sorry. Come here, give me a hug. And what you do is you create an expectation that they come in proximity to you. When proximity is their choice, it's not your choice. It's not a place for them to feel pressure. We're just sitting here, and I'm sitting in my guilt, and I'm letting them control, not me control, what the healing process looks like. We even have to be careful about asking for forgiveness. Because in many circumstances, people need time. They need space. And never forget this. Forgiveness is a gift. In the moment that I ask you for a gift, I'm out of bounds. The gift giver gets to decide whether they're giving a gift. I don't get to pressure you or twist your arm. What I know is I'm so sorry. Now, I'd be shocked right now if there are a lot of people here who had a picture of a relationship in your life, a picture of a conversation that you had, you understood that you said something wrong, and right alongside, I said something wrong. There's definitely another part to this, right? They said something wrong too. They did something wrong. What are we going to do about that? I'll tell you what we're going to do about that. We're going to do our part. And we're going to say, I'm so sorry. And perhaps there will be a time when you get the receiving end of the hole that they dug with you. But if there's one thing I know, that's their conversation to have. My conversation is, I'm so sorry. So, I'm going to wrap up this series with the same question I've asked all series long. Who hopes that you'll respond to this? We agreed in the room, right? Like all of us have someone. All of us have made this mistake. And even some of the mistakes you made, you might think, well, I've cleaned up some of those messes. Do I have any currently hanging out there? That's a great question to ask. My guess is all of us do. And if you sat here for especially a week or two And there have been names and faces in your mind. And I've asked you, who's hoping you'll respond to this? And you haven't responded yet. I want to ask you not to wait another week. Actually, not even to wait another day. But to think within 24 hours of you hearing this, you will at least set up the conversation, if not have the conversation, with the person who's hoping you'll respond. Can you imagine if we did this? Can you imagine if the followers of Jesus in this world were humble enough, were sensitive enough, were aware of the brokenness of this world enough, and that we were the ones who led the way in taking ownership of the things we've done wrong? What if the followers of Jesus in this world were the people who did not say to others, you have to meet me if we're going to do anything, but you say, I'll take the long walk to you to do my part? That would be very much, I think, in the spirit of who Jesus was, what he led us to, and what he calls us to. And so that's my prayer for us.
I hope as you've seen the start of summer, you've been able to experience some fun new rhythms with your family. And listen, I want you to make being a part of Suncrest in person an awesome part of your rhythms this summer. We have amazing experiences for kids, birth through 5th grade, every weekend, and fun events outside of weekend experiences. And for students on Monday nights, and honestly, some other random fun stuff. So this Sunday, June 25th, our student team is having a Nerf Battle Royale. Listen, I hope that you can prioritize being a part of things happening here at Suncrest, from weekend experiences to the fun things that are happening, a rhythm in your life for you and your family this summer. Head to suncrest.org to learn all about the things going on this summer.
I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah
Every week, we pause everything we do, both in person and on demand, to focus on the love of Jesus during a time called communion. It's where in person we take bread and juice, but on demand, go ahead and find anything to eat and drink to represent Jesus' body and his blood that was broken and poured out for us. It's an opportunity for those of us who follow Jesus to center ourselves on who he is, his love and sacrifice, and how that fuels us moving forward. If you're watching this and you're not quite sure what you believe, you're just exploring that, I want you to know this is a safe environment. Our building, our videos are a great opportunity for you to wrestle with what you believe. I'm going to put on a timer here. For those of us who follow Jesus, go ahead and eat and drink when you're ready. For those of us who are still exploring what that means, take the next opportunity to reflect on what you've heard so far in this video. That's a wrap to the series of messages we're calling The Weight of Your Words. I hope it's been meaningful. If you've liked it, go ahead and hit the like button. If you think someone could use this message, hit the share button. And if you want to see more content from Suncrest Church, like next week as we start a brand new series we're calling The Red Letters, go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube. I hope that you'll join us next time, and I hope that you can experience change in your life this week. We'll see you next time.